Alright guys, today is my 77th round of chemotherapy. You're also gonna see a random SCI kind of discussion video on like my C3 injury because I had really nothing else to film. I already filmed it for autism and disabilities, and so why not put it into this vlog? So I hope you all enjoyed that. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.
Bacteria circulating and engage in high-risk activities like walking outside in the summer. You know, that would be a high-risk activity. So I thought that vaccine was sort of killed with a soft recommendation.
Fair. What do you think about the idea of mandating vaccines, whether it's school mandated vaccines, healthcare worker mandated vaccines, or how we had even with the COVID-19 vaccination protocol?
In a better world, you wouldn't need to mandate vaccines. People would be fully informed. I mean,
we need to be able to say, I don't know, a lot more often, and just sit in that uncomfortableness of saying, I don't know.
Right.
But thank you. Appreciate your work. Keep up the great work, as always.
Appreciate it.
Alright, we are playing a game called This or That. It's all up to you. And these are like the minified city. So this is like the minified version of the game. And typically, what are the rules? Put people into teams. They must choose one option to agree on within 10 seconds. Give each person 5 seconds, and if they don't answer within the time frame, they're out. Try to predict which option the person will choose and earn a point if you're right. What? What about charades? What if we play charades?
Why would you want to play? We can't move.
The husband can help.
No.
We are going to try and play this game, and maybe we'll invite you in some gameplay once we
figure out,
understand it. Alright guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we're talking about spinal cord injuries, a C3 spinal cord injury. This is what injury I have, one of my 6 injuries. If you don't know, I am a C3, C4, C5, C8, T1, T10 Complete Quadriplegic. The C3 and the T10, however, are incomplete. I got my injury at 19 and a half years old, or essentially in September of 2021, by falling down stairs. And today we are going to be covering C3. The article, C3 Spinal Cord Injury, What to Expect and How to Recover, I'll put the link in the description. This was actually medically reviewed by Elizabeth Dinslow. Sorry if I horribly pronounced that. A C3 spinal cord injury is a type of cervical spinal cord injury. Survivors of a C3 spinal cord injury can experience movement and sensation changes from the neck down. Depending on the severity of the injury, some survivors lose feeling and become completely paralyzed in the arms, legs, and trunk, while others may retain some sensation or movement. For me, since I am incomplete, which we'll talk about that in a bit, I have regained some sensation and some movement that most people wouldn't really typically think I would have. Doctors had left me, you're going to be paralyzed from the neck down, you won't be able to move anything, you won't be able to feel anything, which was almost correct. Besides the point that I can move my thumb and I can feel my top hand. Other than that, I can't feel anything else. Fortunately, by participating in rehabilitative therapies and effectively managing secondary complications, individuals can learn to become as functional as possible and maybe even recover sensory and motor functions. Which again, I was able to. I'm not complete, by the way. What is a C3 spinal cord injury? This goes into more depth. The spinal cord is made up of a number of nerves that act as connection between the brain and the rest of the body. 31 pairs of nerves branch out from the spinal cord, sending motor and sensory messages to and from the body. A C3 spinal cord injury occurs when damage to spinal cord damage limits the ability for information to be transmitted past the third set of cervical vertebrae. When the spinal cord becomes injured, sensory and motor messages are unable to be transmitted properly, resulting in affected functions below the level of injury. The uppermost area of the spinal cord located within the neck is referred to as the cervical region, which essentially C1 and C2 are way higher than my injury and can be even more lethal than my injury. For C1 and C2, they have a 60% to 70% chance of dying. I have about 50. The cervical spinal nerves send messages between the brain and body regarding movement and sensation of the head, neck, and arms in survivors of a C3 SCI. The spinal cord is damaged directly below the third pair of cervical spinal nerves. This means that individuals with C3 injuries only have 3 pairs of spinal nerves that are fully intact. Therefore, depending on the completeness of the injury, all sensory and motor functions related to the nerves below the C3 injury may be lost. We get to the most important one: incomplete and complete spinal cord injury. Doctors may use various tools to diagnose a C3 spinal cord injury, along with a CT scan and or MRI. Medical professionals typically use physical tests, including an assessment called the SCI exam. This assessment involves testing sensory and motor functions specific to each level of the spinal cord in order to determine the severity and level of injury. The severity of a spinal cord injury significantly affects one's functional outcomes and recovery outlook. A spinal cord injury can be classified as complete or incomplete. So, a complete definition is complete are the most severe, in a loss of all sensory and motor functions below the level of injury. In survivors with complete spinal cord injuries, the spinal cord has been fully severed, leaving no spared neural pathways. Since there is no way for messages to be transmitted through the damaged area, no motor control or sensation will exist below the level of injury. So essentially what my knowledge is that C3 is basically located at your jaw or where your tongue is. C3 is located around the mandible jaw. So if you have that, you will have no existing motor function or no sensation basically from the jaw down, which is true for me on my back. On my back, I have no sensation from my mandible jaw down, but on my front, however, I have a little bit more extra sensation because I'm incomplete. And I don't know why that is, that it gave me full, complete lack of motor or sensation on my back, but it allowed me to spare some on the front. I have no idea. Spinal cord injuries can all be different from one another. In contrast, an incomplete spinal cord injury, which is me, refers to partial spinal cord damage. Some neural pathways are spared, and consequently, some motor and or sensory functions below the level of injury may be unaffected. Incomplete spinal cord injuries may also vary in severity depending on how many neural pathways are spared. Now, I don't know exactly how many are spared for me, but only very little because I'm almost fully complete. When I fell down the stairs, my C3 didn't get fully damaged. Like, my nerve wasn't completely severed. However, on C4, it was blown up. So for me, I have some spared neuropathways in the C3. However, I don't really have much in C4 because it's completely blown up. Like, there were fragments near my T1. So when individuals sustain a C3 spinal cord injury, the first 3 pairs of spinal nerves, C1, C2, and C3, are left intact. These nerves are able to transmit sensory and motor information to and from the brain, meaning that sensation and movement functions associated with these nerves remain intact. The C1 and C2 segments of the spinal cord generally control the muscles that allow you to nod your head up and down, as well as sensation at the upper neck and the back portion of the head. So I don't have a C1 and C2, so my spinal cord injury did not affect the way I can move and bobble my head up and down. I have my full back head sensation, I'm fine in that. It's just that my back is horrible. So essentially from here down, I don't have any sensation from my neck. In the front, I have it from here. That's a lot spared. I have a lot spared, but only up is my real sensation. I don't know if I'm considered lucky or not. I probably am a pretty lucky C3 since I didn't die. Really, on my body, it's almost lifeless and it doesn't really do anything except my top hand. If my joystick was on my lap, when I'm in my chair, my joystick is typically on my fingers, which I can't feel, by the way. I can only feel my half thumb and my top hand. So when my joystick is resting on those and it slides off, because sometimes I make a harsh bump, and there has been multiple times when I'm in my wheelchair and my joystick has slid off for half an hour and I would never notice because I have limited to no sensation on my hands. If you can't tell on my hands, I can't really feel my outer fingers or my inner fingers. I can only really feel my outer thumb, only half of it. And then that's really it. There's no sensation on my armpits, my arms, my chest, my butt, my legs, my feet, my toes, nothing. Just to tell you, I have some nerve pathways and it doesn't affect my head. The C3 spinal nerves are responsible for sensation in the neck area as well as the neck side flexion, which is the ability to tilt your neck to each side. I can't do that. When I do that, my head falls. So my C3 affects the way I can tilt my head side to side. I can bobble it up and down just fine, unless if it falls. But C3, however, affects the way I can tilt my head. So if I do that, my neck will just fall. As a result, individuals with a C3 spinal cord injuries should be able to feel and move their head and neck normally, depending on the severity of injury. Function below the neck may or may not be affected. Functional outcomes and the onset of secondary complications can vary significantly. Potential effects of a C3 spinal cord injury. Every C3 spinal cord injury is different. Having an idea of what to expect can help individuals adjust to life after a C3 SCI. Below are 7 of the most common effects that survivors of a C3 spinal cord injury may experience. Breathing challenges. First one. A C3 spinal cord injury can affect the muscles involved with breathing, which, without immediate medical attention, can be fatal. This is because the primary muscle involved in respiration, called the diaphragm, is controlled by the C3 through C5 spinal nerves. Individuals with a C3 spinal cord injury often require the assistance of a ventilator. And if you can't tell on my neck, I do have a ventilator. And I'll back it up. I didn't have this ventilator, I think in all 2023. I had my ventilator when I became injured in September of 2021. I had it all the way until December of 2022, I believe. And I had also a diaphragmatic pacemaker because my lungs had gone to 1 or to 0. So I had a diaphragmatic pacemaker for 1 year, and then I had a ventilator for 1 year. I stayed off the ventilator when my breathing did good, but I still had a tracheostomy. Until December 8th, because of my ALS and because of the reason that my breathing had gone down drastically, probably because of muscle weakness and degenerative diseases, I ended up with a ventilator on December 8th of 2024. So I've been having this new ventilator for almost 2 months, but it is important to note that I did have a ventilator back then, and I do have a ventilator now. I don't have a diaphragmatic pacemaker now. Depending on the severity of the injury and the effectiveness of a rehabilitative intervention, it is possible for individuals to strengthen breathing functions and generally wean off ventilator dependence. Exactly what I did. But then I got it back on. So it wasn't that great. Paralysis from the neck down. A C3 spinal cord injury results in quadriplegia, which refers to paralysis of the arms, trunk, and legs. Depending on the severity of your spinal cord injury, some survivors may be able to move and or feel sensation below the level of the injury. Yes, I can. However, in the case of a complete C3 SCI, individuals experience paralysis of the entire body from below the neck and require full-time caregiver assistance. Since my movement is not a limb or anything, I can't really help out. So I require full-time care and lifting and transferring from my husband Matthew. 3 differences in body composition. Because spinal cord injuries are at the C3 level can significantly affect most body movements, individuals often experience physical changes to the body as a result of limited active movement. Because consequences of reduced physical activity include reduced bone density. I have osteoporosis level 2, so that is, my bone density isn't as strong, so I can easily break a bone if someone lands on me too hard. Muscle atrophy. I have muscle atrophy on my limbs. If you can't tell, I know they're sort of blinded out by the flash, but I do have muscle atrophy on my thighs, not seen because I have jeans on and pants on. And I also do have muscle atrophy on my arms and my hands. So these atrophy lines didn't start showing up until a few months ago when I became thinner. Poor circulation, thankfully, I don't think I deal with this problem too much, but we did have to make a change to my chair, but they were noticing that my legs had poor circulation, sort of like my feet would swell by the end of the day because my legs were just hanging dead limp, and I can't move them, like they're just dead limp, but essentially my chair didn't have a mat, or chair does have feet rests, I'll mind you, but since the way I sit in my chair, and since the way my spine is shaped and everything, it wasn't going to work. My feet rests probably only held up 1 foot at best, but the other one would be getting too much weight, so I did start experiencing circulation issues. So we just had to make a change where there was a mat so my feet can be rested out evenly, and I have noticed a significant change in the size of my shoes and my feet. Likewise, individuals may initially lose a substantial amount of weight due to decreased bone density and muscle mass. Yes, I lost weight. However, they may also gain weight if they continue to consume the same amount of food as they did when they were more physically active. Oh no. No. I have a feeding tube. No. I used to eat a lot more foods. I've lost head and I've lost jaw strength ever since the beginning of my spinal cord injury. A lot of it. So I can't eat as much as I did. So that's why I've lost weight, because of muscle atrophy and bone density. But I've also haven't been eating as much as I used to. So I got a new feeding tube about 1 to 2 years ago, almost. 4. Bowel and bladder dysfunction. If information from the bowel and bladder cannot pass through the damage of the spinal cord to reach the brain, then individuals with a C3 spinal cord injury may experience changes to their bowel and bladder functions. As a result, they will not be able to sense when their bladder or bowels are full and are more likely to experience leaking and accidents. Yep. Furthermore, if the brain is unable to send messages to the bowel and bladder muscles to contract and relax, eliminating waste at appropriate times become challenging. Yes. Complications of the bladder and bowel dysfunction include urinary retention, kidney damage, infection, and I don't have infection, however I do have kidney damage, and constipation. To prevent bowel and bladder related accidents from occurring, it's essential for individuals with a C3 SCI to follow a bowel and bladder program. So, literally just a few weeks ago, we had, a month ago, maybe 2, we had uploaded a video on how I go to the bathroom with a spinal cord injury. Since I don't have since my brain isn't sending signals to my bowels or my bladder, I have to use a all-in-one catheter system to help me go pee, and I need to have DRS and enemas to help me go poop. Another thing is pressure sores. Since movement of the arms, legs, and trunk is often limited in those with a C3 SCI, individuals are more likely to remain in one position for an extended period. If individuals lose sensation after a C3 spinal cord injury, they likely won't feel uncomfortable remaining in the same position for a prolonged time. However, lack of frequent position adjustments places excess pressure on specific areas of the skin, which can cut off blood flow and cause the skin to break down. When skin integrity is compromised due to prolonged pressure on certain areas, it can result in pressure sores. Pressure sores are most often common in bony areas like the hip bones, heels, knees, tailbone, and elbows. To reduce the risk of pressure sores, it is essential to change positions every 2 hours when lying down or every 30 minutes when sitting. Additionally, inspecting the skin daily for any signs of redness or irritation can help identify and treat pressure sores early before they become problematic. So, I had this issue, I think, on October 19th, I had a pressure sore on my toe. My shoe was way too tight, I never noticed. I wasn't getting autonomic dysreflexia, so I ended up with a massive bad pressure sore on my toe. It was developing into stage 2, which is not good at all. I had this pressure sore, so the pressure sore lasted for about 7 to 6 days, and it soon went away, and I've never had a problem with it since. Autonomic dysreflexia. The autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary body functions like it occurs when these functions become hyperactive due to the disrupted transmission of messages between the brain and the body. I always get autonomic dysreflexia every single day because of my bladder being full. I've come a long way since my spinal cord injury. I just decided that I wanted to talk a little bit about my C3 spinal cord injury to go more in depth, to give you some ideas of what I can move, what I can feel, and what goes on with my body. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!